Welcome back to Just One Question, which sometimes becomes two. And that may happen today because I am thrilled to have Joshua Freedman on the podcast with me. He is the CEO and co-founder of something called 6seconds.org, which is the global emotional intelligence community. And all I've got to say is, why haven't I heard about this before? Obviously, there's more intelligence out there, than emotional intelligence out there, than I realized. Just yesterday or today, whenever it was, the internet emotionally dumped on poor Elmo of Sesame Street because the people out there are not okay. So clearly, we need emotional intelligence, and we need to talk about this. He's this CEO and co-founder, I was saying, of 6seconds.org, and is a world-leading expert on the value of emotions. So your need is evergreen, but especially now, it feels like. Joshua is a best-selling author, master certified coach, instructor for Columbia University and Antioch University. And in addition to partnering with Fortune 500s, that means companies, his work spans all areas of society, including pioneering how emotions are an untapped resource for solving the climate crisis. And that one really makes me curious. So maybe that will be my follow-up question. I don't know. But first of all, Joshua, how the heck are you?
Thank you, Nick. Well, I'm not going to say what I suspect most of your guests say, which is fine.
That's right.
I'm going to use some emotion words. I
Mm.
am excited. I'm stressed. I'm overwhelmed and anxious. I'm hopeful. And I'm determined. And I'm fascinated that all those things can happen at the very same time.
So am I. I like that because, yes, emotions flit through us, as the Buddhists like to say, like clouds in the sky. And so you definitely can have all those emotions hard on the heels of each other. Wonderful. So thanks for that really interesting check-in. We could just declare victory here and say, see, that's what emotional intelligence work brings you. It brings you interesting answers to mundane questions. But we persevere, we move on, and we ask you the question of we're in a moment of technology adaptation and, once again, explosion with AI and all the other things that are happening. And so how does the technology that is now available to us affect your work? And how do you think about technology in this emotional intelligence community of yours?
I see opportunities and threats.
Hmm.
We know that there's unfortunately a lot of data showing that as people use devices more, they're more lonely, they're more disconnected from themselves and each other.
Mm-hmm.
And yet there's so much promise. And here we are using technology to connect with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And AI is making me look a little younger and brighter than I would otherwise. So there's tremendous promise. And the question I keep coming back to is how are we going to grow the capacities we need in order to use the technology well,
Mm.
in order for us to bring out our better selves, the angels of our nature, or just not be jerks.
Mm.
We've seen that many tech companies have been toxic and maybe
Mm-hmm.
even evil.
Mm.
And undermining democracy, undermining humanism, undermining kindness, undermining the quality of communication, and lying about it and profiting from it.
Mm-hmm.
And doing so in a very destructive way, kind of having this glossy mission statement about how they're, making the world a more whatever place, but in fact exploiting our basic biology to make us more reactive.
Mm.
And we know that algorithmic influence is driven by emotion. So who's creating the algorithms?
Mm.
I love I've been having so much fun with various large language models and using them to help me think about the work that I do, and using them, teaching as a professor, helping my students use them to get over that terror of the blank page and
Mm-hmm.
paralysis, right? And even with our emotional intelligence assessments, I was working with a group of young engineers, and I said, well, here's what ChatGPT advises you based on your assessment results. Our organization built the first, as far as I know, artificial intelligence for emotional intelligence. And when people take our assessment, it offers them very practical advice based on your data. Here's what's going to help you have more effectiveness, greater relationships,
Mm.
healthier well-being, and a higher quality of life. So I see this huge potential in it. And with all new technologies, the disruption, how do we navigate the disruption? And my concern right now, Nick, is people are deeply depleted. People are
Mm.
exhausted. People are distressed. And in that state, and by the way, I have the data to back that assertion up.
I believe you.
It's harder to do well
Mm-hmm.
with disruption when we're in that state. And so whether you're, just an individual hanging out in your living room right now, or whether you're, running a whole company, or whether you're a classroom teacher, the people you are encountering, including yourself, are statistically
Mm-hmm.
more depleted than they were a few years ago.
Mm.
And our ability to adapt and innovate and solve problems is compromised by that depletion. And so the urgency for us to be more careful, more intentional about how we adapt and adopt this technology is going to be a real make or break for us.
Absolutely fascinating. So, indeed, I can't resist follow up. And it sounds like what you're saying is that depletion is coming from technology in some sense,
Mm,
perhaps the extra demands of constant communication, constantly being asked to text and to enter text in other forms and to communicate on video as we're doing, and so on and so forth. And you often hear in the business world that it's 24/7 and
mhm,
never ending, and it's always more. And there's that wonderful book by Jeffrey West called Scale, which talks about how the world is indeed speeding up
mhm.
in various ways for humans. Um, when you add all that together, how can we get off that um, bandwagon? Like, what is there to do in response to that? It's not like we're suddenly going to develop huge extra capacity, is it, to be able to handle it and not be depleted? Or do we all put ourselves on communications diets, on
Hmm.
machine diets, or um,
I
what do
think
we
I think
do?
this is your new one question for the
Mm,
next decade, because I mean, I don't think people really know the answer.
mm-hmm,
What I would say is my research on well-being is you can't, there's no yoga pose or, you know, vitamin drink that's going to fix this.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Uh, a lot of times we put the responsibility on individuals. It's
mm-hmm.
like, oh, Nick, you're depleted. You need to take care of yourself.
Right.
Humans are social animals, and we operate within systems. And so, yes, you absolutely need to take care of yourself,
Mm,
and you need healthy relationships and healthy systems. And we have uh, a, a, a depletion in all of those areas, and disruption and destruction in all of those areas.
mm-hmm,
In our companies, we see so many people struggling. How do I work and manage in a hybrid context?
mm-hmm,
I mean, we know I lead a distributed organization. We've been virtual since 2004. I haven't had all of my employees in a room since 2004
mm,
because we work all over the world.
mm-hmm,
And we have a great culture, and people generally feel very connected. And I know there are many others that have built their organization around this.
Hmm.
But it takes a different kind of work. It takes a different kind of thinking. It takes a different kind of skill set. My point is, there's this personal dimension of well-being, there's a relational dimension of well-being, and there's a systemic dimension of well-being. And I think we need to work on all three of those. And yes, we can create tremendous more capacity in all three of those areas, but it will not happen by itself.
Hmm. Yeah, and in America, especially, which is a country known and envied and loathed around the world for its individualism, at the same time, is it's not the place to look for much beyond what you said. That the importance of taking care of ourselves, for our depletion, our
Yeah.
ability to do communal things and system wide things is
And
somewhat
our
limited.
trust in institutions and in one another has declined. And I think that, again, that's part of the peril that if we don't actively confront that and say, this, we have to prioritize learning about how do we build trust? How do we build connection? How do we build healthy systems and relationships? And the internal health, physical and mental health habits for ourselves, that emotional well-being for ourselves. All of those are must do's, and the demand is higher than ever, and it's gonna get higher.
Yeah, and add to that, in this year, the dangers to democracy, because uh,
Yes.
when I was a boy learning about democracy in civics class, they never said that it required at least 80% of the population to have trust or belief in it in order for it to work. It was just presented to us as a thing that worked. And it was a triumph of American civilization. And now we know that's not the case, and it does require work on the part of those of us who vote but might take the rest for granted. So
And trust is an emotion.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So uh, I was hoping in talking to you that I'd end up with this sort of blissful feeling of calm and peace and release. That no offense, but that has not happened, and yet I can't resist at the danger of making me even more unsettled. I can't resist asking you about how emotions are an untapped resource for solving the climate crisis, because that strikes me
Mm.
as another interesting way to go. And it's beyond our scope. So you can tell me, no, Nick, I'm just too stressed out. I can't answer this. But if you're game, I would love to hear your
I am
insights on that.
game. The So in all challenges, and climate change is a massive existential threat, and in this massive existential threat, people feel a variety of emotions. In working with young climate activists, I hear a lot of them talking about um, the characterization of emotions as a weakness, and feeling fear, feeling anxiety as something that they shouldn't have and shouldn't express. And yet, what else should you feel in the face of this existential threat? What should you feel when you see the planet burning around you and wondering, why aren't we taking this really, really seriously? The appropriate emotional expression is anxiety, fear, rage, terror. Like, but those are very hard feelings to grapple with. Emotions are data that help us pay attention to opportunities and threats that we're perceiving, and emotions mobilize us to address these opportunities and threats. They help us connect with each other. They help us get the energy within ourselves. They help us clarify the problem. And when we avoid those feelings, what happens is we avoid the wisdom that we have from us,
Mm.
for us, to step in and connect and solve. One of the biggest ways that we can address big challenges is by building stronger network, building stronger trust, building stronger resilience between us. The the resilience that we need in the face of climate change and in the face of AI. It's,
Mhm.
again, it's not a solo sport. We're going to need to build those resources internally and together. And emotions are fundamentally a universal human language. Emotions connect us. And I've worked all over the world. I work with people in over 100 countries. And my organization works in 200 countries and territories. And as soon as we start talking about emotions and sharing emotions, not in the sort of abstract way, but actually engaging with our emotions, uh, we feel that connectedness. And when I tell you I'm feeling both anxious and hopeful, if I have the wherewithal to actually let some of that feeling, let some of that anxiety come through, I think you almost automatically start saying, "Oh, me too."
Mm. Hmm.
We feel this sense like we're not alone in this.
Mm. Wonderful. Yeah. I think that the other issue with the climate crisis, famously, I'm not the first person that this has occurred to, is that it's such a long-term threat, and we humans are famously better at getting excited about short-term threats, things immediately in front of our noses. And so I'm wondering if you have any special insight on how humans can get mobilized around longer-term threats and harness the
Yeah,
emotions associated with
longer
that.
term threats and opportunities. So in our model of emotional intelligence, we have this kind of unusual construct called pursue noble goals. And it's one of the things we measure in our emotional intelligence assessment. And it's about feeling connected with a larger sense of purpose. And it's not enough to have a mission statement for your business or to have a personal mission statement. Can you feel it? Can people feel the connection with this future state? And can you feel the connection with the next generation and the generation after that? Can you feel like you are part of this larger story in this larger world? And what I've seen is that when people feel that connectedness, it helps us move out of the short-term nature of emotions, and the way our brains are wired for dealing with kind of immediacy. But we have this fantastic capacity to imagine and project and think beyond ourselves and beyond this moment. And when we feel that connectedness and we feel that sense of purpose, it's deeply motivating.
Wonderful. Well, I could go on popping questions to you all afternoon because clearly there's a lot more to be said. But thank you for being on Just One Question and answering several. That's very kind of you.
They were one at a
And
time.
there you go. Okay, just one question at a time. We need a new title, and I'll give you full credit. Joshua Freedman, everybody, the amazing CEO and co-founder of 6seconds.org. Check it out, and thank you for being on Just One Question.
Thanks.